time skips afford you an incredible amount of opportunities to change the status quo of your story. They can let you radically shift genres from fantasy adventure to political thriller. You can change relationship dynamics. People can fall in love and get married and have children, or they can find that they're not suited to their new life and part ways. You can also use time skips to show that no matter how much some things change, there are going to be other things that always stay the same. And the best example of this is the wonderful, charming, heartwarming proposal between Simon and Nia. Nia's quiet, warm smile and Simon's explosive joy are enough to bring a tear to my eye. But unfortunately, not all good things can last. Oh, hey look, themes. Who put those there? I love Spiral Power conceptually, and all of the lore that we get in this episode is really interesting and impactful, but I feel like I'm better suited to talk about it at a later time, so I'm just going to leave it at that for now. What I want to talk about in this episode is a small art direction thing that's happened several times, but I haven't really had a good moment to bring it up. And that's how when they're drawing dialogue scenes, they tend to prefer to cram all of the characters into a single frame, whether it's literally crowding them together or splitting screens through voice communications. There's still plenty of shot-reverse shot and dialogue scenes, but it adds a lot of personality to the framing when everyone is huddled around in conversation. It also serves to improve the comedic timing when there is a cutaway to a few characters not really understanding what's going on. While the first two arcs of the series are centered around Simon learning and growing through the support of Kamina and Nia, the third arc's focus is a challenge of ideals between Simon and Rossiu. The question of whether it's better to do what feels right now and deal with the consequences when they come, or do everything in your power to avoid the consequences ever happening in the first place. And I'm not going to equivocate here. Rossiu is more wrong, but Simon still has a lot to learn from this conflict. If your resolve is weak, you'll falter the moment you find a problem that you can't punch through. And with Simon at his most uncertain since the death of Kamina, this is when he is most vulnerable to falling into absolute despair. Even if he managed to win this battle, the war has barely begun. What I find really striking is that in spite of everything that's happened between the two of them, Simon still has absolute faith in Rossiu during this episode. He disagrees with Rossiu, absolutely, but he knows him well enough to trust that he isn't doing anything out of malice. Rossiu experiences the burden of leadership powerfully, and he's doing what he thinks needs to be done. His only mistake is feeling like he has no other option. He wishes he could believe in Simon and have faith in that never say die attitude of Team Gurren. But for him, the leader's responsibility is to make the hard decisions. And I know that he wants to believe in Simon, because why else would he carry the core drill with him?
I hate it 'cause Dad isn't here.
Dang, me too, kid. To me, this episode is all about perspective. Behind all of the political machinations and world-ending stakes, this episode is here to remind us about what's really important and what we're really fighting for. You could argue, if you were a scoundrel, that the conflict in this episode is boring or insignificant. A boy who's having trouble fitting in at school and a girl who wants that same boy to like her. But I say good, because that's what kids deserve to inherit. A future where they can look up at the sun without a care in the world. Power scaling is an important thing to keep in mind when you're making an action series, because if you escalate the power level too much, then the audience might be left feeling like they aren't really watching the same show anymore, or it's too absurd to really understand. At least that's the industry wisdom. The alternative, of course, is to reach the point of absurdity and start spinning faster. If you give your heroes ever-escalating threats, you can also make it so that they rise to meet the challenge every single time and get stronger in the process. And when you're punching holes through dimensions and fighting the literal moon at the 3/4 point of the series, you can only imagine how much higher there is to climb. Yeehaw, everybody, it's time for a compilation of little things that I like Fun fact number 1, the ring that Simon uses to propose to Nia with uses the same rock that he gave her in episode 11. Wow! Fun fact number 2, Lord Genome's little armadillo guy grew up to be a war criminal. Wow! Anyways, I've decided after I get through all the episodes that I'm going to make a handful of videos about specific characters, and Viral is definitely on the docket. But I do want to specifically mention his line, "I don't want to hear that the war is over," from the man sitting on Teplin's throne, because that has got to be one of the rawest callouts I've ever heard in my life. A fun little bit of world building is that since all of the technology in Communist City is based off of gunmen, none of the vehicles have wheels. They all either walk on legs or have levy spheres. I mentioned it in the description for that video, but episode 19 is like half people staring at each other super intensely. It was a weird episode to go through for clips. All the post-time skip designs are really good, but Simon in particular has incomprehensible levels of drip. I've never really cosplayed before, and I don't think I probably ever will, but if I did, it would definitely be Simon's Supreme Commander outfit. And to finish it off with one of the funnier moments, I love when Nia and Simon are talking inside of the moon, and Simon's like, "I know why you've been doing this," and Nia says, "To inflict absolute despair, like we've been over this," super matter-of-factly.